Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. Might be having some microphone issues, but we'll see. Let's check real quick here. Do a quick test while we check in on the kitties. Okay, it's fine. Okay. So we're going to be continuing our game dev stream today. Desperately trying to remember what I was actually planning on doing today. We'll see how that works out. Might not run the stream too long. All of the cooling systems in the factory have experienced a malfunction. So energy is limited. But hey there, Demon. Hey there. Welcome. Joining us right here at the beginning. How are you doing? Let's put the camera on Amber. And hello, Isaac. So this is where we got to last time. And we're showing a lot going on. Right now, there's 600 projectiles active. About 20 enemies into the screen. We've got the enemies taking multiple hits from a projectile to go away. Towards the edge of the screen, they get wiped out pretty quick because of the pattern we've got going here. But the big reason we're doing this is showing that we've reached this point. Because what we added was interactions in the last stream. And that's when an entity collides with another one. Oh, is it? Unfortunate. Let me try again. Is it coming through better? Let's take a quick drastic measure here. Audio will cut a moment. That will probably work better, is it? Apologize, sometimes the microphone goes haywire at a layer I can't hear. I need to remember to set up a double back. Alright, so let's see, where did we put those? So we have interaction objects now. And what happens is that when an entity collides, we check and see if we have a iframes flag set. That is something that interactions will do, is begin and update iframes. Well, begin the iframes. But for all of our outgoing collections, we tell the entity we've collided with, or we have that interaction kind of touch that entity. And then that entity receives that message. As in, when an entity receives the message, they're the target. The source is where the message is coming from. This is the type of interaction, the type of message that's been sent to them. And this is some sort of object that is relevant to that type of message. So we go through the collection of interactions until we find something that accepts it. Hey there, Skia. Welcome. We go through until we find something that accepts that message, or until we run out of interactions. So either we're going to get a accepted or a rejected to that message. And that interaction then will do its thing. So, for example, we have a very basic one here called interaction die. Doesn't matter what it receives, the entity just removes itself. this is a testing thing. But more likely, we have an enemy takes damage. And it only cares about a particular payload type called damage. And it only cares about it additionally if it has health left to lose. So it can't be collided with if it has iframes going. There might be some other stuff we can do to actually clean that up now that I think about it. If something has iframes going, could we disable its collision entirely? Could we disable the shape? I don't know if we can risk that. Anyway. So if it's a damage type and we have health left to lose, we double check, did we receive damage information, a payload damage object in our payload variant? I don't like this mechanism. Just from a design perspective, having a variant object is tricky. But as long as I keep this kind of pattern going, it does protect us to some extent. As in, if we get a damage message but it doesn't have a payload damage, then the words and things. Oh, just a second here. Blinky icon telling me that the app had started. Let's see. So then, if we do have damage, we're going to apply that damage. If I were to change this logic, actually I don't need to, healing actually works as an attack, which is pretty common, is to attack for negative health. Now, that probably won't be how it works. I would probably have a takes damage. A particular entity would probably respond to a damage message that had negative numbers in it. So, like, the player can heal, but monsters can't, kind of stuff. Or there's a particular type of heal event that gets thrown and only the player listens to it. Any number of options. Runs health, it sends signal remove. And so, if we look here, we have a base health value that we've put in. I'm using base health in case we put modifiers in, we'll see. But then we look at our blob here. And in our interactions, in our incoming interaction side, we have health, and we say it has 2. And in our weaponry here, in our outgoing interactions, we have bullet hit. And bullet hit says I do 1 point of damage and I pierce 10 targets. In a practical sense, what that means is that it will hit 10 times. If it's still inside the same target within half a second, it'll hit him again. But that's what results in what we have currently. Is we can have a really varied outgoing projectile structure here. The next thing we're going to do, and I think that's just going to be the goal for today, we'll see how long it'll carry us, is to start figuring out how we're going to make the weapon modifications actually function. Hey there, fan man. The core premise here, as far as the weaponry that the player has, is instead of having a fixed upgrade path, is that we have little modules that you're going to be able to acquire and kind of move around within your weaponry that will change the behavior. Example, the yarn balls are firing out in random directions in spreads of many yarn balls at once, and then moving in an S-curve as they go. So they rock back and forth. You get a very interesting effect because of how they're arced out in a fan. So they almost have this like pulsing in out kind of vibe, but not quite. The mice are moving in, I think it's a spiral into an orbit, or just an orbit with a wide radius. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we set. But you get a slightly compacted spiral going out. Lost a couple of frames there. Now we may have some leaks in here. I thought we had everything covered, so we should still be good. But yeah. So now we're going to start down the road of messing with what a spawner is doing. That's going to bring up a bunch of questions. So right now, a weapon is a spawner entity, and it's not even like hooked to the player necessarily. Its position is attached to where the player is, if it's the player. But for the most part, let's go into the code. So when we're setting up the game world right now, we just add a spawner entity into the world. There's nothing about it that really cares about where the player that the player exists as far as a spawner goes. So part of this, I think, is that we need to start down the road of having prior knowledge of a weapon collection for the player. Those currently exist at the game level, which isn't bad, but it's also not something that the actual game driving here isn't something that everything has universal access to. And I don't want it having to subscribe to every weapon's like, hey, I got, like, the game shouldn't be the one that's driving that update. I would rather have something like a player inventory or the like. They are global objects. They're really meant to be global to the game, and they pretty much get reset along with the game. So that shouldn't be an issue. Interestingly, the pools don't get reset until the program shuts down, which isn't a bad thing. It means that subsequent runs of the program are actually slightly more efficient. Ooh. Sorry, rambling. Thinking on other things we can do. So one of the problems we have with our object pool is that there's a wind-up period. But what if there wasn't? Could we... We'd have to create a whole catalog of the different types that could happen. We'll leave that for later. It seems like we're at a safe number, but if we put that at like 200... Just thinking out loud a little bit as far as efficiency goes. So this is the number of entities the middle number in the upper left there is the number of entities we currently have pooled in the entity pool. There are various other pools. We require that any given pool has... oh, yeah, we had a hitch of frames there. So at 200, we're actually getting some frames lowered down. What's going on there? Is that coincidence? Not yet, Lunar, not yet. Interesting. Might just be coincidence, but it seems like we were getting some extra cost to having more than 100 as the baseline. To having those 200 in waiting seems to have been some sort of threshold. It definitely cost us there. Hey there, Armando. So if we're moving to the right, we are going to hit a point where more of the entities enter the kill zone. All right, thanks for swinging through. Turret style would actually be pretty easy, Lunar. The trickiest part would actually be getting the a entity representation of it. But if I just wanted to have a spell that started originating from where I was standing and stayed there, that would actually be very easy. Effectively, it would say, where is the player right now? That is where I shall spawn. That is my point of origin. The trickier part would be figuring out how to do that for, like, perpetual elements. So, drop a turret and that turret begins emitting is a little trickier. At the moment, I'm just thinking out loud. But what I'm working towards is getting to... Oh man, that's a neat... It's like it's like we're at the base of a... some sort of, like, tornado. That there's a 3D illusion going on with the mice. Anyway, so what I'm thinking we need to create is a external entity that is keeping track of what weaponry, what inventory the player has access to. I think having a master control for that is going to be relevant. Man. Looks strangely good, not gonna lie. I really do. I like how the mice look like it's some sort of vortex that spirals out from us as we're moving, like we've got some sort of horrible wake. The purple ones are balls of yarn, Isaac. The gray ones are wind-up mice, and the purple or the blue-pink ones are balls of yarn. Okay. Which means... So, a weapon management system, given the current pattern, is going to be where we would keep... It'd be where we would keep the templates for the weapons to use, which modifiers we had on standby, and then a way to connect them to the existing spawners. Now, I don't want... Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. I saw some warning indicators in here, and I don't like those to linger because they are effectively false positives. Hey there, Copper. Okay, so what we'll have is we will have... We're heading into a functionally important part here, Copper. We've got the skeleton, the bones of creating entities, having them move around, having them take effects on each other. So the core idea of player takes damage, enemy takes damage, weapons deal damage, that kind of stuff, all of those are ready to go, quote unquote. But the next very, very important thing, the core gimmick of the game needs to take shape now, and that's the weapon modification. So in standard bullet heaven terms or patterns, you level up and you get some sort of upgrade. Some of them do statistical upgrades, kind of all of your fire weapons do more damage kind of stuff. Or the Vampire Survivor model of this weapon gets incrementally better until a threshold with extra conditions, and if it's met, it gets really better. Your Hollow Cure, where there are additional combos, and it gets exceedingly overpowered the more combos you create, kind of stuff. In our model, it's going to be that you get upgrades that you socket into the weapon, and it's the dealing with the patterns that result are what is going to be the core gameplay. Making weapons that look cool and are effective. Hello, Virtual. Welcome. I'm using the IDE I'm using, and the engine I'm using is Godot. This is the Windows Godot IDE. It's using 4.2 mono. Hello, Hazmat. Okay. Aren't using... Doesn't look like we're using that right now. Well, 1 second here. Godot. pronunciation is something that the team kind of managing the whole system, since there's also community contribution to the engine. It's clear that they had inspiration from, I think it's a Shakespeare character called Godot. It's like Waiting for Godot. I am coding virtual. We are making a game. And they've publicly said that the inspiration was that name. But as to whether that's how the engine is pronounced, they haven't definitively said that. So what I'd like to do today is pull the system for what those spawners are doing out of it. So what the spawners are spawning, what their intervals are, all of that is going to be moved out of the game structure, directly out of the hands of the game structure. It will still point to something, and that's... So what we're going to need is we're going to need a specific node that is things. We need a specific node for where those are going to go. So where you should where to start with a game is a tricky thing. Not like complicated, but there's a lot of it depends going on. So the first thing is understanding what you want the game to be about. So if you want to tell a story, you're probably going to be influenced by that. If you want to present particular emotions or particular imagery, how you're going to choose is going to be influenced by that. If we skip ahead and say, I want to make a platforming game, where do I start? Then you're going to want to look at things like what tools you have available to you, what resources you have available to you, and make a decision from there. As far as what tools you'll choose. So if I have access to a lot of sprite art tools and know how to get or generate those myself, then I'm going to want to have, and I don't have skill or access to other visual assets, then you're going to want to make sure that the engine that you're picking is good for that. Then you're also going to want to make sure that the engine is good for the type of gameplay you want. For example, RPG Maker is actually a decent game engine. But I would not go into it saying, I'm going to make a platformer. I'm going to make a action RPG. Can you? Yes. There are actually script packages that will make RPG Maker have like action combat, like Zelda 1 style stuff going on. But if you do that, there's a lot of extra footwork, and you're potentially kind of contorting the system to do things that it's not good at by default. So picking how you're going to generate your assets and what engine you're going to use based on what you want to accomplish is a good first step. If you aren't already familiar with the tools, then there are tutorials out there. There are, I want to make my first game, like videos and write-ups. Do not feel bad about looking and trying with tutorials first. There are plenty of famous game makers who have cranked out absolute trash games, but they're still games, and somebody might have liked them. I think the classic example, one of the classic examples, Pirate Software gave this one, is in the same year that the first FNAF was released, among many, many games, he also released one called Fart Hotel. It did not have very complex or nuanced gameplay. But it was a game. It was a game, it was made, it was put out there. Maybe somebody was going to like it. So, as far as ease, what I would suggest is looking up tutorials and getting either using those as a kickoff point or using them to get or using them as a venue for getting familiar with tools that are out there. And if you want to do it, if you want to use them. Once you've got that handle, once you're ready to move forward, just start. Start messing with it. You might trip over it. You might fail at your initial attempts, but after that, it's learning. And when you're at that point, it's learning, and you're gonna only be able to do that by doing. There are courses out there that will teach you it, but ultimately what they're going to do is the same thing that I just mentioned. Give you pools of resources to learn from, to gather your basic information from, and then they're going to have you practice and practice and practice. Virtual asks, is it expensive to make a game? Everything that I'm using is, all of the coding resources that I'm using are free. The programs that I'm using for art are not free, but we're talking like under $30 for those programs. I think. I'm using Sprite as my standard one. I have access to Krita if I want to, but you don't actually have to invest anything. You can use all free programs. I'm not using GIMP, G-I-M-P, as my art resource, even though it's a powerful free tool, because I find its user interface to be arcane and painful. Perhaps Eldritch. But yeah, there are free resources. You could make sprite art in MS Paint. New MS Paint, it would be harder. You could do paint stick figures if you really want to. Try it. Figure out what you want to do. Figure out if you like doing it. It's like when people ask about streaming, about like, hey, I want to be a VTuber. How do I do that? And the first thing that I always tell folks is look up how you do it, like mechanically. Can you do it on a particular platform? Like, it's really easy to go live on Twitch. Thanks for joining us, Virtual. It's really easy to go live on Twitch. There are extra hoops on things like YouTube. There are a whole lot of hoops if you want to try to go live on like TikTok or something. That's mechanically how to do it. But after that, it's trying it. Don't throw down a huge amount of money if you haven't tried it, if you haven't learned the basics of doing it. There are a lot of free options out there, or cheap options for things that are available, so that you can see if you even like doing it. And I don't want to discourage anybody from trying to make a game, but one of the common things, and I encountered it a lot with students and the like, is that I love game X. I would like to make game X, but in a way that I think is better. So that's their core concept, and they throw themselves into it, but they don't realize that it's very involved, and then they back off afterwards. And that's okay. It's okay to realize, wait, I don't actually like doing this. I love watching videos of people that make cool dioramas north of the border and the like. And those are fun. Those are fun to watch. I haven't tried doing it myself, and I don't know if I would like doing it myself. But I always have the option of being able to try it and decide if I do. And that's how you should approach this stuff. If you want to make a game, do some quick research on getting free tools together. Things that have very low cost of entry. And then give it a try. Godot's base documentation has a kind of step-by-step hold your hand, make your first game thing that teaches you a lot of the basic Godot tools. And you can do it entirely free. They give you all of the images and whatnot that you'd need to follow along exactly. And from there, you could hit the ground running with that. That's all of the tools that you need to make something very basic. And you can learn from there. When we started this project, let's see, how many days ago now? We started this project 51 stream days ago. I did not know GDScript. I did not know how the Godot engine worked with any granularity. We had opened it up and made like a baby's first project kind of thing. But we have been learning as we move. I have rewritten the core infrastructure of this game more than once. I think we've got a good one this time. With a whole lot of activity on screen, we're holding 60 frames a second. I think we're doing good. For some folks, Don, books can be a really good option. There are plenty of books out there that are targeted at particular engines and the like, and some folks do really well with that kind of learning. Sit down, read the book, go through tutorials, that kind of thing. It doesn't work for everybody. Some folks love to watch videos. I have trouble with online videos because people have problems getting to the point. But find what works for you. Find what works for you. There are software packages that you can get that are... I know there are a couple of game development engines available on Steam that are like, buy this package. Alan Becker. Sorry, I saw that you asked that a little bit earlier, and I forgot there, Copper. I have not heard of Alan Becker. I may have encountered resources that you're talking about, but the name does not ring a bell. Okay. So, spawners need a zone that they spawn in. Yeah, I think we should have an enemy manager. We should have a bullet manager. Then we could also have an item manager. They are not... They don't care about collision or anything, but they act as spawners for it. Because the item manager doesn't actually need a repeat spawner. The monster spawner, the enemy manager, would potentially need up to multiple spawners. Sometimes it's going to just manually spawn a single thing or a group of things. Sometimes it will just perpetually spawn. So the little blue blobs in our current example here are being perpetually spawned in a loop around the screen. I want to add more randomization to that, but you know. Is he the one that has done, like... I mean, there are the classic stick figure fighting animations. But I know there was one that would do, like, random things the stick guys are doing. Inevitably, it involves some fight-like aspects. But you would usually have a group of kind of various palette-colored stick figures. You know, they find a pencil and start drawing stuff, kind of things. Roblox, Second Life, Minecraft, all of those games or pseudo game structures do have their own kind of coding interface to go with that particular game backbone or infrastructure. Um, maybe those are things that you'd want to kick off with. Yep. I mean, there are just lots of resources out there, Don. It's almost hypnotic, isn't it, James? Yeah, I may have encountered those, Copper. Okay. So I think starting with a weapon manager is where we want to be. So I'll move that outside. We're going to need a weapon manager. To get the weapon manager to work, we're also going to need catalogs of entities. So, like a known entity that is enemy blob, a known entity that is weapon yarn ball. And to be able to refer to it by, like, a key. Same with modifier names. If we have catalogs, then we can also request one randomly. One of the aspects of this, and I apologize that it often happens, is that I'm not going through what I would consider a safer dev pattern. That is, a lot of the planning is in my head, and by some degree of luck, I'm good at that kind of structural thinking. So I can plan some of these things out, and I don't necessarily need to remember them. But there's a lot of flying by the seat of our pants kind of development going on here. There are patterns you can use to plan this stuff out better. Okay, so for today, not necessarily the entirety of today, let's start with the catalogs. We originally had this concept and we haven't revisited it. So let's do that. The fun thing is, you can code a game such that it will work on a potato. I mean, it not necessarily literally potato, but I'm sure somebody out there has got Doom running on some sort of, like, science fair potato battery powered Raspberry Pi. But it's not even a constrain yourself, It's work within the limits that you've got and see what you can do. That's part of the reason that I'm using very limited sprites. One, my artistic capabilities do not exceed that currently, and I like the idea of trying to convey information with as minimal resources as possible. So if you look, all of these graphics are 16 pixels by 16 pixels at the most. They are very tiny, but what I want to be able to do is say, look at that, that's clearly a yarn ball, even though there's very little that you can see of it. It creates fun results. Add to that, most of my initial practice with making these sprites was in Noida, and Noida used similar constraints as far as its art. Most of the stuff was in the 16 to 32 sprite sizes. There were some exceptions that frankly broke a lot of rules as far as art consistency. Some of the bigger monsters had resolutions that were way beyond that, but okay. Catalogs. Extend a node. Each catalog would potentially have its own thing going, but I think we can abstract this out enough that we don't have to reinvent the wheel for each catalog. So we would have something like a variable items as a dictionary is equal to a nothing at the moment. Then we could have second. There we go. Source in this one. And target in this one. I try to keep these errors contained. Because again, Godot engine, that is the one. There is a version that can handle C# libraries and a version that can't. There's no cost to using the one that can handle C# libraries. I would suggest taking the one that has mono capability. Because eventually, if this really hits the ground rolling, I may abstract some of my entities out to C# entities. Since the processing of the processing capability of saying, let me get a more concrete example. When an entity moves, it's going to call into this movement chain object. There's no actual physics going on in this. There's none of those interactions where we're saying move and slide or move and collide. Those are physics intensive, and apparently GDScript is better at that based on some testing that people have done. But since all of this is not that kind of move and slide, the raw math that is being done is easier or is faster in something like C#. And that's fine, Copper. That's how you get going. Like I said, the online documentation for Godot has some good tutorial in it for how to do stuff. Okay. Back into our catalog. So we'll have function add item. I suspect there's gonna be some weapon types or some abilities that are going to have behaviors outside of what we've got. So there might be some hard-coded things out there. I like the idea of... what would it be? How to put it? I like the idea of avoiding raw statistical bonuses. So by not having things like the player moves faster, we can consider other options like the player now moves in short bursts, like the jetpack aspect. The player moves quicker, but in big hops. They might in some form, Lunar. Inspiration comes from a lot of places. But can we do this properly? Do we need to do it the same way? Because if I do add item here, I can't guarantee that the template that we use, that we pass in, is going to be something that we should accept. We could have a master catalog. Because it's not like I need to have individual... It's not like there's really a bonus to having the individual catalogs. So there's the download copper, and there should also be online documentation. And you can search that for like how-to stuff, or you can use a web browser to search, Godot tutorial kind of stuff. Some of those will be the basic Godot tutorials in their documentation. Some of them might be other websites that accomplish the same thing, perhaps better. Some of them might be videos. But I'd start with that because it'll often walk you through, this is how you create a project, this is how you do the first stuff. Yeah. Excuse me. Yep. And that's what you might find, Cheesy, is you might find that a particular engine is outside your grasp, perhaps for the time being, or maybe just you don't like it. That's why I generally advise people it's probably not a good idea to leap in the deep end with something like Unreal Engine. Those are very robust and expansive engines that often require more detail or a longer run-up period. I would absolutely not suggest somebody try to build a graphics engine from the ground up. You could, and a lot of companies do that. They have internal engines, but yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. Hey there, Half Pint. Well, thank you. Thank you. Here. I always like to show it off. There you go. Perhaps someday I'll add some more movement. All of these are dictionaries. I don't need to add to them. I probably should actually add to them. How do? So I could add to them and have a initialization function that goes through and in code adds all of the templates. That would be an option. Let me think on that. Gonna take a quick break, get up, stretch, that kind of thing. Top up the beverage. Half Pint, there's something to be said for uh, just just lazing about. So one possibility with the catalog is something to trigger adding to it. Another possibility is to go through and fill it in the user interface. but they don't exist in the same way for that. They can. Ultimately, I just like cats. Uh, the Catbot Corporation tested with a lot of users and determined that cat ears are something that people find cute and approachable, and thus modeled all of their products with a cat-like aesthetic. The initial Catbot, though, much simpler in its design, still had cat ears and cat-like features on its digital facial display. Half Pint long term goal is to make it compatible with as much as I can. Initially, it's probably going to be a PC Steam thing. If it takes off from there, we'll see. Most of the other platforms are a little harder to approach. They are all walled gardens with particular requirements. So, uh, if it works out on Steam and I have the resources to do it, adding some extra work to get it elsewhere, I mean, would just be a good idea. All right, Copper, thanks for joining us. I think having it be a resource that I populate manually is a pretty good option. But it means that it's vulnerable to having the wrong entries added. If I initialize it manually and have like an actual script inside the code that adds all of them as part of an initialization, then I can avoid that by having the constants directly invoked alongside the entities. But then I would also need to have them populated. This is tricky. And I am now distracted by scratching Sherbet's back since he has come for attention. Okay, so what I'm thinking about here is that I don't want to do this. This is bad. Because if I move this file, this breaks. But if I don't have an explicit reference to the entity, I'm not able to set its keys up properly. So what I'm probably going to do is have a scene for it. So let's look how we did this with some of the globals. Player Factory has a scene associated with it. And if I go into my project and my auto loads, Player Factory is an auto-loaded scene. It's ultimately the same thing because these extend node. Globals have to extend node. So if I go into catalog and I'm going to add a scene, it will extend a basic node and it will be called catalog. And then in catalog, take that node and we attach an existing script to it. So now the catalog scene, this node in the catalog scene, has this script attached to it, and thus is called catalog. The advantage here is I can export these. This will be easier if I do it this way. Load. Can be a good idea, cheesy. Some people prefer laptops. Space and mobility can be a big consideration for some folks. Uh, with PCs, if you don't need, if you have fewer concerns about space and mobility, PCs are often a cheaper option. Uh, Statistic for statistic, the same capabilities on a PC are often cheaper to achieve. Uh, Also to repair and upgrade. But even a small upgrade, from what you have to a currently cheap model, can be pretty good. So these are an array of entity template in this case. Entity template is special. I could actually make entities their own template, and we might want to revisit that, but there is a fundamental difference. No, I'm just thinking out loud, Half Pint. Those things are probably available. This one is an array. Having a little trouble typing because my movement is constrained by the cat leaning against my neck. GPU probably a little trickier, but I'm sure they're available. I'm sure you're more aware of what the options for your particular case are. Because I believe things like movement and interaction act as their own template. Yeah. All right, thanks for swinging through, Half Pint. All of these things could be part of the entity, because for the most part they're just copied over. There isn't anything like falling in this game, Daptu. It's not a platformer or 3D environment where there is actually a fall mechanic. Okay, well, trying to convert this over into it such that the entity is the entity template is a later issue. Thank you. The two that are visible are Sammy and then Ember. Let's see how many others we can see right now. There are 5 total. We have Sky up in his cat tree. Sherbet and Mason are not visible. Dexter's a fun name. I first encountered it in the old Cartoon Network cartoon, Dexter's Laboratory, before they ruined it. At export. Okay. These templates should have doesn't have a name for it. They should have a constant name. Now I really want to make the templates the entities themselves. Because then we can have baked in functions for them. because random target is a movement type, and movement types have all of these variables to them, but baked into them they have a get type, and we can override that. So I could have entities that have that returned as a constant. Meta aspects like that might kind of fourth wall aspects of that, like that, will potentially appear, Deptu. I've wanted to. I've already done it once for Noida to have things like YouTube stream interactions. Figuring out how to handle the multi-streaming that I'm doing would be a leap, but incorporating that kind of thing so that there can be passive audience interaction would be interesting. I'm going to do this because movement types, it's relevant what they have with them. But they don't necessarily have their code name built in, and I need that. It's more that the API isn't as friendly, Lunar. You can definitely do it. It's just figuring out the way to do it through their API is tougher. Hey there, Chavez. Welcome. Because, for example, Twitch, it's easy to connect to chat because the chat is an IRC feed. A very well-established constant feed. Yes. Whereas YouTube is not that. What YouTube is a queryable interface. So to get a chat message in Twitch, you will have connected to what amounts to an event. So whenever a chat message comes in, your software is notified, hey, Twitch has a chat message. Here you go. With YouTube, you have to ask YouTube, what are all of the chat messages since this timestamp? And you get them and process them. But it's an active thing. I have to go and get it as opposed to a passive or a receptive thing like Twitch, where it tells me as soon as it happens. And you don't want to hit YouTube too frequently. Like, you can only have so many requests per unit time. So there will always be a little bit more of a delay with the YouTube interaction. Add to that it's not like there's just one stream. Like with Twitch, there's just one stream. With YouTube, there can be any number of streams, and you have to go find them. So it's a little different. It's a little different on every front. I ended up jumping through some weird hoops to make it happen. And I don't know if the same thing would work for multi-streaming, because StreamerBot does not seem to connect to both chats. I think it connects to whichever one is first. Yeah. Good to see you again, Chavez. Okay, how we do? So I don't want to have a code object for every type of entity. Kind of ruins the point. But I also don't want to have a string constant that I have to enter for everything. That could become a hassle. Like, I don't want to have this be an enumerated type. Or a subvariable where I have to say this is, I want a flag value for this. Like I've had to do in this. Something different than export flag, but we could, but it feels like needless duplication. And it also doesn't really solve all of our problem. For those joining us, we are coding our game, and what I'm currently puzzling through is a way to make it so that when I add a template, I can properly have the entity type cataloged. So for the nature of, this is further different. Movement type is purely for pooling. We need an actual identifier for these templates. And I would love for it to be unique. But I can't guarantee that. It's a big error surface. This feels like something I should have from a JSON, parse the file, load the templates. But I think okay. We're working on our catalog. We're working on a place in code where I can specify a bunch of templates and then make them available to the rest of the code. I could hard code an initialization that instead of specifying, there needs to be a place where I name them. And that should be an export value in the template. So that I can specify the name. That means it's not a constant, though. It's not a referenced constant. I can't control whether I am referencing it properly. Can I do that? Let's export variable catalog name as a string is equal to that. So then I go into blob template here as a catalog name. Can I attach a constant to that? It's just going to be a string, though. Entity template. export in an enum, we have these as parameters. It's a variant argument, so it's a chain of things. Category. And a group. You don't want a node path. It's not a flag. Hello, Jelly. Welcome. We are puzzling. Will it accept an array? Let's... enum. B. C. As... That is always a risk with cats. A lot of cats are really murdery. So I want this to be able to be a variable. Let's... No, it doesn't like having an array for that. The problem is not that I can't get around this. I could have entity templates just have a catalog name like this. The difficulty is referencing it later. I would like to be able to say that it is not a constant value. And I don't want flags, and I don't want to have to enumerate them in two locations. But we also don't want them changing arbitrarily, because unless the entity template can reference it, it'll break down. We can control it to some extent, but okay, we're just going to have a cataloging. By default, it's undefined. It shouldn't be undefined. And we're going to do that for each of the types. It has extras, so each should have export variable catalog as string is equal to undefined. We can make that a constant though. Catalog name defined as a string is equal to undefined. So in interactions, we do the same thing. In movement, we do the same thing. In position, we do the same thing. We fundamentally know what the type is, so it's okay that this isn't a parent class thing. It would be convenient to have a catalogable item to the template, but that feels like multiple inheritance at that point, and let's not go down that road. Okay, so we have positioners, interactions, movements, and entities. Okay. So then each one will have to have that name. So now if we go into our catalog, we can add entity, which will be a template as entity template. No, okay. entities to load. Entities. Add. And I think we can do it this way. Okay, then we're going to do this for each one, just in case there's extra we need to do. Because we want to be able to have some variation to these, but... And we don't want to treat them as variants. Entity template. Yeah, okay. We're largely going to do this 4 times. Okay. This is in positioners. This is a big reason that I'm splitting these things up and that I'm making extra functions for it, is this right here. And correspondingly this. I can force the types, which means I can make sure that I have the right object and that I don't accidentally load the wrong thing. Nope. That, and that, and that. And that. So, for each of the ones in the load list, add it to the actual dictionary accordingly. Be really good to be able to get the names. Because otherwise it'll be prior knowledge. And I hate that. But it might be something that we'll have to deal with longer term. Entities underscore load. Events. Positioners. Load. Interactions. So then what we can do is in this catalog object, we have arrays that we can populate and stuff the templates in there. And then that will give us references where we can do a get on them. So I can say, get this particular one. I can say, get a random one. And that will return a copy of the template that we're going to use, which will remove the need to copy it in other locations, because we can just say, gimme. And those will be known. Now, I'm going to have to reference them by constants elsewhere, and again, I don't like that, because that runs the risk that we don't have that mirrored. Which is why I want to do things like get random. Which tells me I want to have separate things for the different types of entity. So instead of entities, I want to have monsters, and I want to have movement types as well. I'm sorry, weapons and monsters. Prepare to break things. I can make a separate template type to say that enemies are fundamentally different, but they're not. There's nothing really different about an enemy and a weapon. So this is a do it right perspective, but I could ultimately make that an inherited type so that I can force it. And I think I will. And it would be really good to move all of this into entity and have the template in the entity be the same thing. Wouldn't it? Ooh. I've encountered a little snafu here. For example, we have movement types that extend resources. Each of them has adjustments they can make. Each of them has their own thing that they can do. So what the template does is specific to it. But it's okay that these are templates themselves. Entities, on the other hand, have a lot of baggage. I don't need to have... I do have all of that stuff, don't I? Yeah. I still have all of these things. It has a texture. It has animation frame sizes and offsets. I could mitigate a lot of the problems of the template. Like, the initialization and the like could be greatly simplified by not having to do this crossover. And it could save me scenarios for that. I want to do it now? Because if it's a copy of the template, I don't need to update all of these things. All of that will be known. And I just need to have the template logic that stamps over top of it. That will create idiosyncrasies with some of it. But we already have to do that. Okay, so I was working on a catalog of templates, and in doing so, I have discovered, or at least determined, that entity templates and entities don't need to be different things. The entity template concept was created before I did all of the movement stuff. And the movement stuff is handled better because we don't need to do footwork to make all of these things carry over. All of this can just be part of the entity because we don't need to translate it and store it then. There are some values that wouldn't need to be preserved necessarily. Actually, no. All of these are stored off. All of these are needed. So we have template and we have derived things. Okay, quick break. We'll get back to it in just a moment. And I will try to better explain what I am thinking. Okay, I'm back. What we're gonna do is we're gonna commit our current branch. Wait, we're gonna verify that what I just broke, and then we're gonna commit our branch. Okay. Okay. I'm going to quickly commit that branch. Hey, look at Sherbet all sprawled up on his tree. By committing the branch, we're going to be able to avoid blowing up all that we've already accomplished with entity pooling. Because what I want to do next is get all of the entity stuff moved into the entity itself. And start moving away from some of the global constants as well. Because anything entity related can then live in the entity object. And that can mitigate duplicate constant values. Yes. Yes. Okay, let me get that commit going here. Okay. So the reason that this is potentially going to be a big thing is that we are... This is just straight up a big change. This is a non-trivial refactor. Because all of this now moves into our actual object here. Color modulate should be with the sprite anyway. Rotate to face is part of the sprite. Shape type is up here in navigation. All of navigation. We're going to shuffle things around for coherence. Hello, Ember. Hello, baby. Ember has come along for snuggles. There's definitely some positioning shift with where the cats are resting right now. Like I mentioned earlier, the cooling systems at the factory have broken down, so the heating pads are less attractive options. We are mitigating the issue with air circulation. Hopefully we'll have all of that back up and running tomorrow. Well, it definitely won't be tomorrow, but we'll have the preparation done tomorrow. We knew it was coming. Budgetary considerations. I'm not typing because Ember needs, Ember demands both hands engaged. So by moving all of this stuff in here like that, we're going to be able to convert these over from the type that they are into just raw entity. But that's going to break a lot of places. So we need to move through it systematically, find the spots where it's busting. The log definitely inherits from Node. I don't know what the problem with that is, but okay. Nothing currently broken in here, but we need to converge all of the relevant values. Let's keep spaced nicely. Physics, I think, are their own thing. Yeah. Navigation should move up here. What's the matter, baby? Or says you started typing, so she circled up onto my shoulder and started headbutting me. Physics is a separate thing. Upkeep is a separate thing. Okay. So then we can now take an entity instead of an entity template when we mess with this stuff. So we're going to look at spawner. We're going to look at any place where we've got an entity template, and we're going to shift that over to being an entity. Break. now we need to go into the entity where we initialize it. But we don't need to pass in a template to an entity because the entity itself is the template. We already have this. Already have that. Already have that. Already have that. Already have that. And create movement chain. We don't need an entity template because we already know all of those values. That's every other month, Ace. Do, do, do. Hello, Casio. Welcome. We are coding a game. I'm in the midst of a refactor that's probably going to make some stuff explode, so I can't show it to you outright. But welcome regardless. Okay, this is a little different. We have templates for those entities, but we need explicit ones. Because we don't want to be messing with we don't want to be messing with the core template. This will be a little different. Movements collection doesn't matter as much as the movement chain. It's the movement chain that actually contains the rel position, the rel movement. It is the incoming collection that contains the rel ones, and the template is where we specify them. So jump down to the next one. Say template incoming. Template outgoing. This would technically work as we had it. It would technically work in that we recreate what we had from the templates that we have. Effectively, we create actual instance from the template, but that would be modifying the template that we currently are sitting on. No. We don't need to do that. Because we pass it back. We say, okay, convert the value into a series of actual templates. And this template is a copy of the original. So we don't have to worry that we're actually messing with the original when we do this. So this is weird. Potentially weird, and I don't necessarily want to do it that way, but I think it will ultimately work out better like this. Or it should work out this way. So we tell it to initialize in the spawner. So it doesn't need the template. It's going to change the entity pool a little bit here. Because now the type of entity matters. Or does it? So right now there's not different entity types. But I think we need to add the typing just like we currently do. And we need a way to apply the values of a given entity over top of another one. Yeah. This is why I committed before I did this, because it's possible that what I'm doing will break it for a while, and I need to be able to backtrack. I need to be able to backtrack. Think. So go into an entity, and we're going to have a function here. Movement chain, clear the image, move, say velocity. None of these are overrides currently. just call it a default for now. That. Let's check what we're doing with interaction. Get type. Okay. We'll update this, but the intent of this is so that we can say if we end up having a difference between a weapon template and a monster template or a player template, that kind of thing, we can say this is a player entity. Okay. So now in interaction, we have set template values. Okay. Then in each interaction, we need to have set template values called this. I'm updating the pattern a little bit. Does not have its own. Okay. Then in each movement, we already have set template values, right? Oops, everything here. Template catalog name. Then in each movement type, we need to make sure that we call super on template. Refactor. Find out what I break here. It doesn't need to be updated. This one does. This one doesn't. Does. I am updating any of them that have their own exports and thus need set template values to be called to call their super object. Wait. Yeah. Whoops. Okay, and then in each positioner, we have to go into set template values if it's relevant. And call super positioner template. And I know this is not thrilling part of game dev, but it is a reality thereof that we often have to do this kind of thing. It's a reality of programming in general. Okay. So now entities have set template values. And if I do, I'm going to go into entity pool, and we have entity pool. Entity pools is a dictionary. Dictionary equal to this. Pool is an array of entity. If entity pools as entity template.getType then pool is equal to entity pools .getType. Else entity pool is equal to an empty array. Entity pools that is equal to entity pool. Then we need the okay. Get bool string it returns an array of type entity. Nothing for now. That also cleans it up a great deal. Entity pool is equal to that. Entity must extend resource. So these array of type entity to get entity pool entity type So just calling this essentially purges all of the values from it. And we're making sure to only do this once. Doing it twice in a row will cause explosions. Okay. So now when we're creating an entity, we need to give it a template. And we're going to return duplicate. Copy. Okay, so now in spawner, a lot of stuff should be broken. Yes, yes. We're getting there. We're getting to that. Deinitialize. We are close to getting to that. This is not true, though. So there is a shouldn't be an entity template. We have new entity is an entity object. Okay, so the entity isn't being rebuilt here. So we're going to reload our project to try to force it to recognize some of the changes so far. Player, what's wrong with spawn on player? Nothing wrong with spawn on player. Okay, that's game. I mean, it's nice that you think that, Cheesy. You are free to have your opinions. Tuxedos tend to have some similar appearance to them. So we go into the player factory object. Okay, we have a lot of things that are ready to go. Socks is often a nice descriptive name for a cat. A lot of colorations lend to that look. Grace seems like a very cat name. We get the template in. We set it to our actual entity. And then actual spawn logic. We have a new entity. We'll call you spawned entity. Okay. These test templates won't actually work because they are entity template objects. So we're going to need to make new ones of this. Same with all of them. So that we can get everything updated properly. Hello, Anna. Welcome. Ultimately, this isn't an entity. This is the entity template. We should keep that named entity template. It'll be to use. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Now what? So now, okay, we need to start making some new templates. It's a new resource, and it is an entity. Oh, you player. We'll use the player. For those that are new, we are making a game. We are making a Vampire Survivor style game. Yeah, it varies moment to moment, Anna. There are 3 different streams. Sometimes people watch in a wide format view on YouTube, sometimes in a tall format view on YouTube, and sometimes in a wide format on Twitch. At the moment, nobody's chatting, but I tend not to keep track of how many people. Just so. There's the player template and its movement. It needs to be updated. No. Movement's fine. here. For positioners, we don't need a spawn position, I think. It is a bullet heaven game. It's like Vampire Survivors. There is, there are levels and meta progression, but it's not what you would traditionally, or it's not the kind of game you would label as an actual RPG. So we have the player object. We're going to go into the game. Is it ready? Yeah. I have upgrades for the weapons. Self is quite complicated. Gonna need to have okay, if it's pop front, then it is entity not set template values. Template. As entity is entity template dot duplicate true. Turn that entity. Then an entity, we do need to get set template values going. Ugh, function. Okay. A lot of stuff to set here. Because we already have this entity. We don't want to create a new one because we already have one. Same way we don't want to delete them. We want to reuse them. And we don't want memory to bloat, and we don't want to waste time deleting stuff. It's not exported. Movements is exported. Duplicate that array. Positioners is the same way. Incoming and outgoing are the same way. Lifespan. The part we're doing right now is making it so that when we create an object in a world, like a bullet or the player, we are applying a series of settings to it. So this is what it looks like, this is what it moves like, that kind of thing. Entity pool, we set template values, otherwise we duplicate the template to create a new one. We return the entity. Okay. All right, the player is back. Yay! Now, it's another entity. This one will be enemy blob. And blob. It avoids and collides with other entities. its movements, it moves to player. Okay. So the blobs move to player, and they also need a texture, which is in blobs currently. Hey there, Drew. We're doing okay. We're doing a big ol' refactor right now. We're going to leave their interactions out of the way for a positioner. On spawner path. Spawn on spawner path. So now we move back up to our blob, and we're going to use spawn on spawner path. So now we go into our game. Then I would get $100, and they would get a little super chat thing, and I would appreciate it. We'll put that for now. I would be relatively surprised that would be true. Should be colliding. Why they no collide? Call spawn. We initialize them. We initialize. Okay, so the first one that we get, we should be in the middle of an entity player. I have to check this because these group values are that might just be the nature of it. Okay. So we have nothing. We have a movement. So we're going to go through. So again, this should be our player. Yes. So then we're going to get in again. And it's a player again. This time an enemy blob. I don't know why we're initializing it twice for the player. Seems odd. Anyway. Let's check its navigation values. Okay, it has no avoid mask. Oh, that's why. Okay. If I made my own YouTube-like platform, if we assume, let's set aside the difficulty of the difficulty as far as getting people to enter a platform that is new versus a well-established rival. YouTube has a ton of features and existing content that you would have to convince people to come and view what people are creating. So let's say content flows like water into this new platform. Ultimately, what I would be trying to do as far as a new platform would be removing advertisement focus from it. Again, this is a fantasy scenario. So if all money that came in was from donations and content that was removed from, let's put it another way. If it was a not-for-profit structure, if it wasn't a standard corporate board structure, then I think the platform could be fundamentally improved. Start there. Then I would also look at policies like DMCA enforcement and whatnot and try to shore them up to actually follow the law. Such that when somebody makes a claim, that there is a requirement for them to prove themselves. Right now, a false claim is very likely to make its way through. It's very hard to defend on platforms like YouTube. So changing it so that content owners need to jump through more hoops to prove that they own something, and that there is a fundamental penalty if a content owner makes a claim, a supposed owner makes a claim, and it gets to the contest stage, and ultimately they end up having to drop it, that kind of thing, that they lose something on the platform. There needs to be, both in the law and also on platforms, there needs to be a consequence, a severe consequence for that kind of thing. And you have that kitty. No, those kitties are mine. The upper one is Mason and the lower one is Sammy. Okay, So the avoid mask and the collision mask are set up in this way, and those constants are enumerated types that are ultimately entities. So if can I get away with this? Okay. We don't refer to these anywhere, really. There. Okay, I'm not seeing any hard overlaps yet, but I'm seeing sufficient overlaps that it might not be working. Nope, it's working. Yay! Okay. Oh dear. All right. Let's wrap up for the night. So what did we accomplish today? We accomplished a refactoring. We started down the road of creating a catalog, a place that I can load all of these templates in, so that instead of referring to the template by file path, in the code I could refer to them by name. That's going to be a maintenance issue long term. That could be a problem long term. I may need to have better ways to interact with that. Or better ways to load the templates or similar, so that I can know what they are. Things could refer to them. But in the interim, we started down the road of creating that so that I have a way to access templates potentially at random from anywhere in the game. Then, having started down that road, I realized that I don't need the concept of an entity template anymore. The entity themselves can act as a template because the entity needs all of the values in a template anyway. So it shouldn't really be a big cost to add those. Hopefully I won't regret this. We'll leave. We'll move forward with it as it is. You are indeed officially here, Undefined. Next time, in a declaration that almost never works, next time we are going to be doing the coding, I want to finish the catalog logic so I can start loading all of these entities in there and set it up from there, that we can start working with it from there. And that will lead us down the road of getting those item givers and getting the weapon generation logic in place. After we get catalog, then the next thing is to get manager objects. Things that say, hey, I'm keeping track of the player's inventory and weapons and similar, so that we can move that out of the generalized game object and into some sort of global, kind of overarching handler. Next stream is going to be on Friday. We're going to be continuing our fresh playthrough of Undertale. Going to that and that. We're continuing our fresh playthrough of Undertale. We're doing another thing. We're doing another pacifist playthrough. After many years, I played it a long time ago, and we'll be playing it again on stream. When we're done, we're going to proceed into some Deltarune, and then potentially some of the fan ones like Undertale Yellow. We'll see. We'll see. But our next coding stream is, if things go according to schedule, on Saturday. So I hope everybody had a good time. Thank you for joining us. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But in any event, have a good rest of your day. I'm going to route you along to another stream if it's still going. We'll see.